Can't afford my kids? What a loser. My sister mocked me, even though I never agreed to pay for them. The next day, when I told her I was done paying for everything, Linda screamed, "You're abandoning your own family." Hey Reddit, I'm Michael, 32. I work 2 jobs, construction during the day and security at night, barely keeping up with bills. I have a 6-year-old son, Liam, and every dollar I make is supposed to go toward building a future for him. But for the last 6 months, I've been paying for more than just my own kid. 6 months ago, my sister Sarah showed up at my door with a suitcase and 2 kids in tow. Her landlord had kicked her out, her ex wasn't paying child support, and she had nowhere else to go. Just for a couple of weeks, she had promised, wide with desperation. Just until I figure things out. I should have known better. Weeks turned into months. She didn't look for a job, didn't try to save money. Instead, she settled in, treating my house like her own while I covered everything: groceries, rent, utilities, school supplies. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I was helping family. But as time passed, I realized she had no intention of standing on her own 2 feet. I barely had time to sit down before her kids started tearing into the food I had bought, again. My legs ached from another 16-hour shift, but Sarah didn't even glance at me as she refilled her glass of soda, acting like I was nothing more than a delivery service. So, I cleared my throat, rubbing my sore hands together. I want to talk to you about the money. I can't keep covering everything for you and the kids. I have my own child to take care of, and I just can't afford it anymore. Sarah's fork clattered onto her plate. She blinked at me, then let out a sharp laugh. You can't afford it? She mocked. You have a job, don't you? I inhaled deeply, trying to stay calm. That's not the point. I'm already paying for my son's school, rent, bills. Oh, come on, she interrupted, rolling her eyes. You don't even have a mortgage. You're just being selfish. Selfish. The word made my stomach tighten. I had heard it before, many times. A memory flashed in my mind, the day she moved in. She had been all gratitude and promises. I'll help out with groceries, she had said, unpacking her bags in my living room. I'll get a job soon. Just need a little time. At first, she did little things, cooked dinner a couple of times, picked Liam up from school when I worked late. But as weeks passed, the job hunt never happened. Instead, she spent her days on the couch, scrolling through her phone while I worked myself to exhaustion. And now, months later, she wasn't asking anymore. She was demanding. I clenched my jaw. Selfish? Sarah, I've been helping you for 6 months. Groceries, school supplies, daycare. And now you expect me to cover extracurriculars, tutors, new clothes every season? When does it stop? Her voice rose. When does it stop? When I don't need it anymore. That's what family does. Or, at least, that's what real brothers do. I exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. Sarah, I never agreed to raise your kids. They're not mine. That's when she smirked, that cruel little smirk I'd seen too many times before. She leaned forward, voice dripping with mockery. Can't afford my kids? What a loser. Her words hit me like a slap. But the worst part? The kids were right there, listening, watching. And that was the moment I decided enough was enough. After that dinner, I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying Sarah's words in my head. Can't afford my kids? What a loser. I had spent half a year keeping a roof over her head, feeding her kids, and making sure they had everything they needed. And that was the thanks I got. She didn't just feel entitled to my help, she thought it was my duty. By the time my alarm rang at 5 a.m., my exhaustion had been replaced with something else, cold, hard realization. I had let this happen. How had it gotten this bad? Sarah wasn't always like this. Or maybe she was, and I just didn't see it. Growing up, our family was far from rich. Our dad worked as a mechanic, and our mom took part-time jobs here and there, but money was always tight. I got my first job at 15, bussing tables at a diner, while Sarah got to focus on school. The difference was clear early on. I was expected to work for what I wanted, while Sarah was used to getting things handed to her. When she got pregnant with her first kid at 22, my parents stepped in to help. When she had her second, they stretched their budget even thinner. And when their health started declining, Sarah's help turned into a constant string of requests. Just this once, Mikey. I promise I'll pay you back. That was 4 years ago. At first, I didn't mind. It was small things, covering a bill here, buying groceries there. Then it was daycare fees, then rent, then school clothes for the kids. And before I knew it, I was the one responsible for keeping her afloat. And she never, not once, said, thank you. Instead, she acted like it was expected, like I owed her for simply existing. And I let her. The breaking point came that morning. I got up, pulled on my work boots, and left without a word. I wasn't ready for another argument. But when I got home that evening, Sarah was waiting. Michael, we need to talk, she said, arms crossed. I sighed, already exhausted. About what? She scoffed. About what you said last night. You embarrassed me in front of my kids. I blinked. You embarrassed yourself. They're scared now, thinking we won't have food or a place to live, she continued, as if I was the bad guy here. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Sarah, I never said I was kicking you out. I said I can't pay for everything anymore. Same thing, she shot back. If you stop helping, how are we supposed to survive? You get a job, I said simply. Sarah rolled her eyes. It's not that easy. I have 2 kids. What do you expect me to do? Work at a grocery store for minimum wage? I stared at her. Yes, actually. She laughed. Unbelievable. And then, in that moment, I realized she had no intention of ever working, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to. Why would she? She had me. You know what, Michael? She said, shaking her head. I always knew you were selfish. But this? You're abandoning your own family. If Mom and Dad were still here, they'd be ashamed of you. That was it. That was the final straw. I felt my hands clench into fists, but I forced myself to stay calm. No, Sarah. If Mom and Dad were still here, they'd tell you to stop acting like a spoiled brat. Her face turned red. You can click on share and more to see if there is a part 2.